All right, what's going on, everybody? John McKechnie here over at RotoWire. Free agency, free agent frenzy got started today at noon Eastern. It's been nuts. I think we all kind of had that expectation. We had some big name fantasy guys that were going to be hitting the market: Kenneth Walker, Travis Etienne, Alec Pierce, all those guys. So we're going to get into that a little bit, and then let's say we hit a little draft too while we're at it. So I'm just going to give some initial thoughts here. Won't ramble too long because we'll just kind of react in real time as we run through a draft here. But want to grab a couple of the big guys here before we get rocking. So looks like, according to my sheet here, so Kenneth Chiefs. Obviously, that's a big one because I think the market kind of had cooled on Isaiah Pacheco. He'd sort of like gone to undrafted territory, and the Chiefs were an obvious need. I think a lot of people were torn between either mocking Jeremiah Love Jeremiah Love to the Chiefs potentially with their first pick, or make a splash in free agency. And it came down to Travis Etienne or Kenneth Walker as sort of like those main guys as primary options for the Chiefs, who are pretty busy today. I feel like I'm a little bit laggy here, folks. I apologize if that is the case. But yes, Walker to the Chiefs, that's a big deal. I did a draft right after the free agent signings, and he went second overall. I don't think that's indicative of where his value is going to end up overall, but I do think that it was interesting that someone was ready to be quite so aggressive. Apologies here. We got Etienne going to the Saints. Jennings, Louisiana native, going back to the homeland there on the Bayou. I think that's a good get for the Saints. They didn't have like a ton of cap space to be working with this offseason. That's kind of the usual case for the Saints. But Etienne going there, we'll see what that means for Alvin Kamara and his future with the team. But it was clear that the mixture of Devin Neal and Kendre Miller probably wasn't going to be enough. And I really feel like there's a ton in the draft to where you say beyond Jeremiah Love, yes, this is a guy that you can feel comfortable, stacking 200 plus carries onto. So Etienne, prime of his career, I think that's a really nice move for New Orleans. So Etienne and Walker had been kind of going in a pretty similar ADP. Or Walker maybe a little bit earlier, third round, Etienne a little bit later. We're going to see in a few minutes here how much that's changed. Rico Dowdle going to the Steelers, replacing Kenneth Gainwell, who went to the Bucks. So both of those kind of frustrating fantasy landing spots for both of those guys. If you had been taking them at their relative cost, we'll see if either of them slide too much. The one that I found kind of sneaky interesting was Tyler Algier going to the Cardinals, because James Conner, as good as his career has been, some big injuries in there, getting up there by running back standards in terms of age. Algier, I think, has a lot to give. I think he's proven that he's someone that can take on a pretty big workload. People used to like curse his name when he would get carries instead of Bijan Robinson, but Algier's a very good player, and I'm excited to see what he can do out in the desert. Unfortunately for me, that means that my Trey Benson dream is probably dead, but you live and you learn. Grab some receivers here quick. So Alec Pierce returning to Indianapolis on a huge deal. I think there's only like 5 receivers that have more guaranteed money in the NFL, maybe the average annual value, than Alec Pierce. So he picked a pretty good time to have a pretty insane season, did he not? But he's always been someone with a pretty interesting downfield skill set, and who knew that it'd be like Daniel Jones that unlocked it. But pretty amazing season from him, and now he's going to be making 28 mil a year. Pretty insane for one Alec Pierce. Get some of this stuff out of here. Moving on. So Wan'Dale Robinson, think people had a little bit more sticker shock about him than they did with Alec Pierce. I think in Pierce's case, that it was kind of well understood that he was going to be the top free agent receiver in this particular cycle. But Robinson, I mean, he's had his moments, to be clear. I'm not acting like he's scrubbed by any means. And I think also you run into a situation like the Titans where it's like you're probably going to need to spend a little bit more money to get someone to come to town. So, he ends up getting, I think, $78 million is on Wandale Robinson's contract. Again, another guy who picked a really good time to have a really good last season before hitting the free agent market. So that was big time for him. What does that mean for Shamir DK? Kind of one of my favorite late round guys. Wandale did work primarily out of the slot during his time in New York. That feels like kind of like where he's probably best deployed. I still think that there's room for DK to do something in that offense, but you do kind of worry about his projection ceiling as a result of Wandale coming to town. Rashid Shaheed returns to the Seahawks. I think that's a smart move for both sides. Mike Evans, no longer a Buccaneer. Tough. He is now a member of the San Francisco 49ers. We'll see what he has left in the tank. Injuries have been a big thing for him these last couple of years. A little bit surprising that he's not a career Buccaneer, but I think that he was ready to test the market, and the Niners were ready to bring him in, kind of as a replacement for Juwan Jennings, who is still, I believe, as of this recording, still unsigned. I'm going to go ahead and jump into a lobby here. I'm going to do a big board here for this one. So I'm over on Underdog. Going to do a fast draft over there, and we can follow along. I'll get the board pulled up once that's going. But if you're interested in drafting alongside me, maybe you can get into this one. Doing one of those $10 big board drafts. Looks like we got 4 spots left if anyone wants in. Before we get rolling here. Right. Just waiting for a couple more people. Gonna tweet it out. Sorry. Make sure that everyone can see that what we're about to get rocking here. Okay. Maybe I should get better at multitasking. Oh well. But yeah, really interested to see how much the ADP has changed. I think we're going to see some pretty extreme swings here. Like I was saying, Kenneth Walker went second in this draft that I did earlier on in the day. Don't necessarily expect that again, but I do think that he's someone that could, we could see routinely going ahead of like Chase Brown or even Derrick Henry. Potentially as the ADP kind of resettles after this. The free agency always kind of like this one seismic shift in the ADP as the offseason unfolds and as best ball season gets heated up. The draft will get rolling here in about 45 seconds. And I will be picking 9th. I've had the second pick arguably too much. It's a hard thing to complain about, but 9th. I'm going to need my eyes to adjust a little bit here to the new offerings at my disposal here. Looks like that could leave me guys like CeeDee Lamb, Amon-Ra St. Brown, James Cook, Devin Achane is sort of the main characters here. Getting rolling here, 10 seconds. All right, draft board will be pulled up here in just a moment. first pick coming off the board as we speak. Okay, Jahmyr Gibbs goes first. I think we might see that be a little bit more common with David Montgomery being gone. I feel like he's kind of firmly moved into that second spot on the ADP. Okay, we got the board up. All right, let's rock, friends. All right, so pretty standard so far. We got Gibbs and Bijan coming off the board, then Puka and Jamar Chase. So yeah, pretty standard start here as we get things rolling. I will of course voice it when we see that first kind of big jump. Jonathan Taylor going sixth. Should have some good options here falling to me at 9, of course. CeeDee Lamb comes off the board. McCaffrey goes. That was going to be one of my few McCaffrey shares potentially if he was still there for me. I'm going to go with James Cook. All right, so there's my first selection. I'll be coming back up around the corner here soon. Marion Hampton. I had my eye on him for my next pick, but he goes with the 11th selection overall in this draft. But my thinking with Cook essentially is you're getting pretty like unfettered access to a lot of touchdowns in that Bills offense. I feel pretty strongly that they're going to be able to kind of keep that machine rolling. And it seems like, at least for now, like they're confident with James Cook being that main primary guy. So as long as he is able to hold up, as long as he's able to stay healthy, I mean, you're talking about just scoring opportunities galore. And those are obviously incredibly important in a format like this with the half-point PPR. So definitely wanted to get some access to James Cook. And I felt like the 9th overall pick, not too rich of an asking price. Jeremiah Love comes off the board. That stings a little bit. Saquon staring me in the face. I feel like I've been overthinking my Saquon this year. I feel like he's still got some juice, some major juice left. So I'll go ahead and take him 2.4. Derrick Henry was a little bit in consideration. I'm worried about Baltimore's offensive line now. The interior of that offensive line has pretty much been eaten alive this offseason. Either guys hitting free agency or Tyler Linderbaum obviously leaving in free agency. All they've done to bounce it back a little bit is just John Simpson, Ronnie Stanley getting up there in age, Roger Rosengarten kind of coming off of a rocky second year in his own right. So, I feel like it could be one of those years where Derrick Henry's going to kind of have to be Superman, because I don't think the line is going to be particularly like road grading in front of him, at least as it stands. There's still, a decent amount of free agency still to go here. But yeah, for me, even with Saquon having like a relative disappointment of his season last year, I feel good about him with my second selection there. And obviously now I'm going to be hunting receiver with my next pick. Kenneth Walker did go in front of Derrick Henry, so I was wondering. It definitely crossed my mind to go with Kenneth Walker. And I have my gripes with the Eagles offense too, but I think the Chiefs offense is a little bit in trouble. Like Mahomes coming off that big injury. Kelsey's back, but he's getting up there. That offensive line, I think, needs some serious help as well. So I don't know. I felt like Saquon was still the right pick over Walker, but I do think that overall it's not going to be super uncommon to see Kenneth Walker sneak into the later part of the second round now, potentially settling in over Derrick Henry and on a pretty routine basis. Bucky Irving, that's a pretty nice value there with the first pick of the third round. Obviously, a lot of his competition has gone out the window this offseason, whether it's Rashad White or Sean Tucker, but they did bring in Kenny Gainwell, who had a pretty terrific season last year in Pittsburgh. Was a little bit surprised that Pittsburgh was not interested in bringing him back. But still probably, well worth that selection there early in the third. I am back up. I got a lot of receivers I can go with here. I'm going to tee it up. Going T. Higgins right there. And hopefully I'll be able to get another one on the backside of this round here, at which point I will be feeling pretty good about this start. There's a lot of receivers still available. Lad McConkey, Garrett Wilson, Devontae Smith, Zay Flowers, and Jameson Williams all here available as we get to the later part of the third round. All right, Josh Allen, the first quarterback off the board as we end the third round here, getting into the fourth. It's been, Breece Hall going helps keep some of those receivers within striking distance for me. I think I got my idea of a couple of guys here that you feel pretty solid about. Boy, Garrett Wilson's available, and I love the talent when it comes to Garrett Wilson, but what are the Jets doing at quarterback? I mean, are they in the Kyler Murray sweepstakes? It's remains to be seen. It's a little bit wonky out there. All right, I'm gonna go with Zay Flowers. I'll go with Zay. I know I was just kind of ripping on the Ravens offense, but I mean, Zay Flowers, even in a format like this, where he only scored a couple of touchdowns this past season, I think he was still wide receiver 7 in half-point scoring formats. So you still feel like he has pretty clear command of being like the number one target for Lamar Jackson. I feel like Mark Andrews is starting to kind of fall by the wayside, or maybe that's generous. Maybe, he's more than that at this point. But, the Ravens, as it stands, don't really have much in the way of secured targets, especially after Isaiah Likely and Charlie Kohler hit the trail today. I know they're both tight ends, but still guys that could be targeted in that offense. That offense, I think, generally is going to look a good bit different this year with Todd Monken being gone and Declan Doyle coming in. I'll reset a little bit here. I'm going to try to get eyes on where Travis Etienne went. So Etienne went 3-3. So that's about 9 picks earlier than he had been going. So that's a pretty strong statement from the market there that Etienne's move to New Orleans is a good one for him. I think it makes that offense generally a little bit more appealing for the rest of this year. Will be interesting to see, because I always kind of felt like I wondered if the market had fully priced in where Bashal Tutin's ADP had settled. He's going like at the start of the 7th round, 73.9, but that was before, again, today's news. So obviously there haven't been enough drafts just yet to completely change that ADP. But I wonder how early is too early for Tutin. So if I'm in the market for my third running back, we're getting into the 6th round, I might have to consider it. Brian Thomas moving way up above his normal ADP. His ADP was 57.9, and he went with the 47th pick in this one. So, chat, if you can let me know if he just got traded somewhere, that would be appreciated, because as it stands, it seems like kind of an aggressive go for him because, I think there's at once the reasoning that, oh, he's going to get traded. That's a good thing for his value. But where exactly, I think it is a different story as far as his value is concerned. No, it doesn't look like it. The last thing I'm seeing out there really is J.K. Dobbins getting the 2-year deal. Like Evans slips a little bit. He'd been going. Oh no, he actually went a decent bit higher in his ADP as a result of his move out to the Bay Area. He went about a round and a half earlier than he had been, going pick 51. Usually he was going at like the 6th pick in the 6th round. So interesting there. All right, we're at an interesting point in the draft. Late 5th. The early quarterbacks have largely, they've dried up a little bit. I guess I could hunt Joe Burrow maybe with my next pick. Jalen Waddle coming off the board. That stings. Definitely had my eye on him. I'm usually not the biggest Christian Watson guy, but I like that big play potential that he brings to the table. 6 touchdowns last year. I think that'll work for this particular build. Again, provided that the schedule gods are kind to me with a little bit lack of an overlap. We did see Bashal Tutin go right before Jalen Waddle, so that's an important one. We were just talking about where's the new ADP for Bashal Tutin going to settle in. He was like an early 7th round guy. Now he's a mid 5th round guy, at least in this draft. So we'll see if that becomes a common theme, if he pushes even higher potentially over these next few days. People are going to be pretty juiced about Bashal Tutin. I mean, he's really fast, good, big play guy. I have questions about, is he really going to be able to shoulder the load? I feel like Jacksonville, their work's not done yet. You lose a guy like Travis Etienne, I feel like you're going to need to attack that position at least a little bit in the draft or free agency. I don't know if they're going to bring anyone in at least of major note, maybe like a Sean Tucker type. But I do feel like Tutin is like, he's one of those guys that's going to be big time helium. Grab some Joe Burrow here, link him up with T. Higgins. He just goes right after Jaden Daniels. I've got Burrow pretty much right at ADP. All my picks so far have pretty much been right where they have settled in. Maybe like a slight reach for James Cook, but haven't done much in the way of reaching. Haven't really gotten any huge values just yet either. Marvin Harrison, interesting case. I think that we kind of knew that there was a good chance that Jacoby Brissett was going to be the starting quarterback in Arizona, but now that's confirmed, obviously. And, that the passing game went bananas last year down the stretch, but a lot of the bananas, weren't exactly benefiting Marvin Harrison. Michael Wilson had the huge year. Trey McBride had the all-timer as a tight end, but, Marvin Harrison, we're still kind of waiting on that breakout, but, we're seeing there's still some faith in the market on Marvin Harrison to where it's like, all right, maybe that breakout is coming here in year 3 for him. But the hope is, of course, with Arizona that passing game is still going to continue to kind of print production from us. But I do wonder, what's the appetite of this new Arizona coaching regime if Jacoby Brissett is losing pretty much every game? How well does that sit with the Cardinals? Are they cool with, kind of more so being ready to take the first quarterback in the draft next year, whomever that may be? Alec Pierce finally comes off the board. Is about half a round above what his ADP had been. So not a massive change for Alec Pierce. And I think I agree with that. I think that Pierce is, where he had been going in drafts is about commensurate with what I would pay to get him. It's going to be hard to completely replicate what he did a season ago, but they did get rid of Michael Pittman. That's a little bit less competition for targets. They don't exactly do the same things in that offense. But you still feel like Pierce, as long as they have some semblance of competent quarterback play or quarterback play that can at least take those risks and go downfield a little bit, you feel good about Pierce's ability to kind of make good on that. We've got as far as like the draftable options here that are available, it feels like it's a big pocket for quarterbacks, and there's not much in the way of skill guys floating out here for me. Sorry, gotta think this one through a little bit. All right, Jalen Warren comes off the board at 7-7. I'm a little bit worried about him with Rico Dowdle coming to town, but he still produced with Kenny Gainwell doing a lot last year in his own right. Grab a little Jacoby Myers, I think. If Brian Thomas gets traded, immediate value, I think, for him. We got some comments flowing in. What's going on? Ooh. Philly Mike chiming in that Dallas Goedert just signed with the Bengals. That's not nothing. I trust you, but I'm working to verify that as well. Give me a second. But yeah, I know they just got rid of Fant. Not that that's a huge deal. Or no, that was a while ago. Never mind. All right, so I got Jacoby Myers. I got another pick coming up here relatively soon. I got some ideas. I was thinking hard about Tucker Kraft, honestly, but Team 11 just kind of saved me from myself a little bit because I've been a little bit hesitant to get a ton of him, considering the knee injury that he's coming off of. I still think that he's a beast of a player, but we'll have to see just how quickly he's able to get back up to 100% coming off of that. All right, here's one of my free agent dalliances. Tyler Algier, come on down. Going to the Cardinals. I like that fit. I know that they're not going to have the lead very often, but as much as I love James Conner, I'm worried about him holding up over the course of the entire season. I do feel like Algier is kind of low-key ready to have a workhorse type of role out there in Arizona. Again, it doesn't seem like they're huge on Trey Benson. I know he never was able to really come back from that injury last year, but yeah, I do feel like Algier is a decent get there. And running back gets a little bit funky, I think, from here on. Like you're talking about rookies, you're talking about some of these free agents like Kenny Gainwell, like Rico Dowdle. So we're going to keep a close eye on where those guys end up. Of course, Michael Pittman, another kind of big mover today, going over to Pittsburgh. I think that targets are available in Pittsburgh. I think that there's a lot of room in that offense for improvement as far as the passing game goes, but they got to get the quarterback situation figured out. Like, is it going to be Aaron Rodgers again? Is Aaron Rodgers going to just like hold them hostage the way that he used to with the Packers and the Jets? We shall see. But I do feel like there's some juice potential in that, and that offense was glaringly missing a wide receiver too last year. I mean, now if Rodgers is back, like, is he really fully able to support two fantasy receivers like DK Metcalf and Michael Pittman? I do think in Pittman's case, at least, like, he's the guy that runs the short routes. So I feel like targets could be plentiful for him, but they got to feed those tight ends too. I think that's sort of where they do actually have a bit of a positional advantage and matchup disadvantage for the opposing defenses. Tony Pollard going 8-9 there. Obviously the Titans didn't get involved really in the running back market today, but does that mean that they're going to spend the fourth overall pick on Jeremiah Love? I'm not sure. Actually, what's going to end up happening with that? I think that the way that the chips have fallen in the running back market, a little bit confusing, and also I don't think Pollard's half bad. Like I think he's actually done a pretty good job the last couple of years in Tennessee. Was actually huge if you were in the playoff push last year. I feel like he had some really strong games down the stretch. So he's certainly, an interesting fantasy asset. His value could really, really be impacted by the draft if they do go with Jeremiah Love. But if he's able to kind of like make it out unscathed, all of a sudden, like he's worth way more than just a late 8th round selection. All right, we're almost to the halfway point here. Jackson Dart just comes off the board along with Matthew Stafford. Chris Godwin, health permitting, a lot of targets are going to be available in that offense, with Mike Evans being gone. Different role, of course, but, still going to need to get that offense a little bit reconfigured anyway. So I think more things could be geared towards, of course, Emeka Ibuka and still Chris Godwin, and provided that, he can kind of get back to where we were used to seeing him as a producer. Oh, I'm up. All right, I went Aronde Gadsden. And I understand that they just signed Charlie Kohler. Kohler's actually not a bad pass catcher. But I think when you have a guy like Gadsden, who like that is pretty much all he can do from the tight end spot, you bring in a guy like Kohler because he can kind of move some bodies around as a run blocker. So I'm not worried about like any sort of eating into the target share to be done from Charlie Kohler. I think he's a good signing. I think he's a good football player. I think that's a shrewd move by the Chargers. But yeah, by that same token, like I'm not worried about that when it comes to Gadsden. Gadsden was enough of a difference maker this past year, and that offensive line is going to be better. Like, or put it this way, it can't be worse. So I felt pretty lucky to go late on tight end and still wind up with Aronde Gadsden. One thing I've noticed this year is that quarterback really kind of falls off a cliff. Now, Jordan Love kind of scares the hell out of me sometimes. Like, there's some weeks where he looks like he's the guy, like the absolute dude. And there's other weeks where you're like, my God, like, should they have kept Malik Willis? But I felt like, he correlates to my Christian Watson piece. And I just like, I didn't want to play the game. I have enough Tyler Shuck as it is right now. So I didn't need to get any more. Need to slow my exposure down basically just a little bit. Malik Willis is available here as QB 22, but we'll see what's up with the Dolphins. I don't love their coaching staff, even if he has some connection to Jeff Hafley. He was running the defense. So either way, I'm paired up now. I got Burrow and Jordan Love. I feel good about those two as my quarterbacks. Maybe I'll get a third. Maybe I won't. We'll kind of see how the rest of the board shapes up. Kenyon Sadiq going a little bit earlier than I'm used to him seeing. Yeah, he went about a round and a half earlier than usual. And that team already had Trey McBride, so kind of an interesting approach there. Probably could have waited another round and still ended up with Sadiq. But, I'm not going to be, if I were him, I'm not mad about it. A McBride and Sadiq combo as my top two tight ends. Question really is just, do you feel great about having spent, two top 10 round picks on those guys? But, right now his tight end room is in much better shape than mine is with just Gadsden. So I will need to go back to the well here relatively soon. What do we got here? Hayden Hurst retired. So that really throws off my tight end plans, actually. Got my Rappaport notifications on, and so most of it extremely useful information. That one, maybe less so. That's all right. We're moving and grooving. We're into the 11th round. Coming up here in just a few picks. Oh, Kevin Concepcion goes. So a couple of these rookie receivers coming off the board, and that's, oh, dang, really kind of had my eye on Matthew Golden there as my next receiver. That would have paired up pretty nicely, I felt like, with my Jordan Love and Christian Watson. Get a decent bit of access to that passing game there up in Green Bay. But alas. Philly Mike, if you can throw this Dallas Goedert thing in the link to that story in the chat, that would actually be very useful. So I could use an extra Joe Burrow pairing. All right, I'm back up. Definitely not drafting Trey Benson. I'm not going Bill Krosky Merritt. I'm gonna go Brenton Strange. I probably have enough Brenton Strange, but I'm worried when it comes to Goddard. If I'll feel bad about it if he does end up going to Cincy, because that would be nice for this build. But like Goddard was, it was such a huge touchdown season for him, like in a way that was like almost double his previous career high. It's gonna be kind of difficult to replicate that. And that offense was so, Hurts couldn't hit anything on the outside. So it felt like a lot of things kind of funneled in Goddard's way. If he's gone from that offense, I don't know if he's going to be in quite as favorable as a setup. And he's low-key getting up there a little bit and has definitely had some bumps and bruises over the course of his career. It's coming back around. Not much to see at running back in this range, unfortunately for me. Boy, it's kind of tough out here around the whole way. All right, maybe I'm going to test my luck here a little bit. Went with Tyreek Hill. I definitely jumped him up ADP. So maybe that was crazy. He definitely had a pretty tough looking injury last year that cut his season short. But if he still got at least like 90% of that speed, 80% of that speed, maybe that's asking too much. I feel like he can still have like one or two more good years, depending on if he gets like in a good landing spot. That's my first Tyreek Hill exposure, I think, of the year. But the board was definitely a little bit unforgiving to your boy here. But I have a pretty stout start to my receiving core with Higgins, Flowers, Christian Watson, and Jacoby Myers. So I felt like I was a little bit positioned to take a risk there with Tyreek Hill. I felt like there's a decent case to be made for upside if he is able to bounce back, prove that injury was not something that's going to keep him down forever. All right. Moving, Rashad White comes off the board. I don't know if he is signed anywhere just yet. Josh Downs, I think, Downs is someone who I like a ton as a player, but I don't love him in the half-point PPR format. I think he's a little bit like a rich man's Wan'Dale Robinson in some semblance of of how I evaluate him. So, um, you know, you can't really it doesn't really push you over the top in this format to just have a ton of catches without a ton of yards and touchdowns. And I fear that even with Michael Pittman being gone, that maybe Downs isn't going to be able to quite get there. Let's see where he went relative to his previous ADP. He went about a round earlier as a result of the Pittman trade. So that gives you a good glimpse of uh, the this instant market reaction. Interesting to see how much Woody Marks has fallen. His ADP is 141, and he went there, but he's someone that I feel like was going in like the 10th round not too long ago. But obviously that David Montgomery addition, I think, signals to everybody that Houston wasn't going to be happy going into the next season with just Woody Marks as the main guy, especially with Joe Mixon and everything that's come out in regards to him. Travis Kelce goes. He's going back to the Chiefs, of course. Jonathan Brooks. I've not drafted Jonathan Brooks his first couple of seasons, but it's been really bad luck for him, of course, each of those years. I think the Panthers are, incrementally getting better. And I think with Dowdle gone, only Chuba is ahead of him. So if there's a year to do it when it comes to Jonathan Brooks, this might be it. Get a little Kayshon Boutte. Never mad at that. Been drafting him a fair bit. Stephon Diggs is gone. I think they have a lot of young guys that are still proving themselves in New England. But I think by virtue of what's happened in free agency so far at the receiver position, the Patriots kind of not really being able to get in on it and like capitalize on it. I think just like a bigger role for Kayshon Boutte and playing alongside Drake May, you got to love that. That's something that kind of steered me in the direction of that pick. And I think as long as his ADP stays in that general vicinity, I'm going to be happy to take Kayshon Boutte a pretty decent amount here as draft season, continues to heat up and solidify. All right, so we just had James Conner go off the board. Again, that's a fair bit later than I got Tyler Algier. I think I got Algier inside the top 100. Yeah, I got him at pick 88. So, a bit of a spicy one, relatively speaking. I'm kind of positioned where like I need Algier to start. Otherwise, it's a great value for James Conner at 13.11. But I again of the opinion that we're going to have a lot of Tyler Algier out there in Arizona. Pat Bryant coming off the board, and we're pretty much out of quarterbacks now, with Cam Ward also coming off. The next available quarterback would be Daniel Jones. Not sure how keen I am on that, so going to keep my eyes peeled for either a running back or a tight end, I think. Ooh, Charbonnet just went. That stings a good bit. I was definitely ready to click him. You know what? He's better than Theo Johnson. Come on, Isaiah Likely. The Giants just gave him a bag earlier on Monday. I know he's got Theo Johnson to contend with and something of a scattershot quarterback, but I think Isaiah Likely, what he showed over his 4 years in Baltimore, he's a talented guy who was just always kind of blocked by Mark Andrews. The 1 year that Mark Andrews got hurt with that broken ankle, I think Isaiah Likely was like tight end 1 the last 4 weeks of the season. So he's got that talent. It's always been just kind of a matter of opportunity. I don't think it's like a great Giants passing game. I think Jackson Dart still has a lot of developing to do, but Likely can be that guy in the short and intermediate that can make some big plays. So I'm feeling okay about that. As my tight end 3, I think I could be in worse position. All right. I desperately need some running backs now, though, because it's getting grim, folks. One of my favorite guys, kind of in the end game, had been Caleb Johnson late, but I feel like Pittsburgh's signing of Rico Dowdle tells you pretty much everything you need to know about Caleb Johnson and how they view him. So it doesn't seem like that's working out particularly well for the young man out of Iowa going into his second season. Could be kind of another lost year for him. But again, I am a little bit pinched as far as my running back options are concerned. We're gonna navigate this. We're gonna be fine. If Cook and Saquon end up being good, then I'm not gonna need too much more help. But I'm still gonna need some bodies here to get me over the finish line. All right, Brissett goes. He had been okay. So that's another pretty notable market reaction. I would say his ADP was 192.6. He went pick 169 in this draft. So over 2 rounds ahead of where he had been going. I think that's a pretty strong statement. But again, with the solidified role, I think that's a pretty solid pick. I mean, you would have paid more than a 15th rounder had hindsight been working in your favor last year. Like, for what Brissett was able to do when he took over for the last 9-10 weeks of the season. Not great for the Cardinals, but pretty awesome for fantasy purposes. You would like that was worth more than a 15th rounder a year ago. So I definitely understand jumping the ADP in light of the news when it comes to him. All right, I got to take a running back here. A little Kamani Vidal. I think the Chargers are just going to be able to run the ball extremely well this year. I want access to that offense. So I've got Gadsden. Now I've got Vidal. Maybe not the best two pieces of that offense to be getting, but still getting access to that offense. Hampton, I don't think, is injury prone at all, but obviously did get hurt last year. And I think the big thing for me was that Vidal was able to produce in his stead. And yeah, again, I think that if Harbaugh has his druthers, they are still a run first operation there in LA. And again, Slater's back to himself, and Joe Alt is back to himself. All of a sudden, that offensive line is better. They're moving people, and all of a sudden, I think that Vidal is someone that can, at least he's got the contingent upside. I'm guessing I might get maybe 2 usable weeks out of him, maybe 3. But again, hoping that that's all I need, given that I went really hard at running back to start this class. Looks like the Cardinals just signed Devin Lloyd. For those just following along on the free agent market as that unfolds. So Carolina really busy today. I know the Raiders have been the most busy, but Carolina not far off. They've had a lot of stuff going on. All right. Taking Keaton Mitchell. That's completely I'm hoping for upside. I think that he still has the wheels. I think he showed that at points last season. It just was that he was completely kind of blocked by Derrick Henry, except when he wasn't, like that game against the Patriots. But I believe that the burst is there still with Keaton Mitchell. I think he's pretty much all the way back from that injury that he suffered as a rookie. And I think there's a lot of backfields out there that could use his speed. I think you look even within the division, I think the Steelers or the Bengals, although the Steelers having picked up Rico Dowdle today, that probably puts that out the window. But I think the Bengals could still be kind of within reason a team that should be in consideration for Keaton Mitchell. Obviously, there's the Ravens Giants ties, but and he would be like a very different running back from like Cam Scatterbo and Tyrone Tracy in that offense, but he would be at best like the third. Um, there's still a way I think in which we see Keaton Mitchell, end up having a couple usable weeks. That's all we're looking for, just a couple usable weeks from our running backs late in this draft. What else we got here? So I think I am just going to stick to the bit as far as fragile QB build is concerned. Unless, I mean, if we get to the 19th and someone like a Mac Jones or an Aaron Rodgers is still available, or maybe even Tua, maybe I'll get a third quarterback. But right now I'm going to try to like just kind of hope that those two guys, both Jordan Love and Joe Burrow, are able to last for the full regular season. I probably am going to try to grab at least one more running back to get me kind of back to level. I do feel good about my receivers, and I do feel better about late round receivers generally. I feel like late round running back, maybe I'm chasing my own tail a little bit. I even wrote an article about how difficult it can be to find a good running back after round 14. So should have listened to my own advice, but potentially a little bit more. So if you hate this draft, I don't entirely blame you, but I'm going to say that this is a good one. All right, I'm back up. Give me some Manny Wilson. I would love to see him in Detroit. I don't know if that's crazy or not, but he's kind of like that big thumper that could be a really, really nice compliment, I feel like, to Jahmyr Gibbs. I think that the Detroit still has a little bit of work to do as far as their backfield is concerned. Not to say there's anything wrong with Jahmyr Gibbs, but if I'm Detroit, I want to keep Jahmyr Gibbs fresh, and I want to keep him fresh all season. I don't want to like give him too much dirty work. I think Emmanuel Wilson can be that guy like David Montgomery was, to where it's like he's just kind of tenderizing that defense, and all of a sudden, Gibbs is doing his thing, of course, but still enough left over for some production when it comes to that second back in that backfield. All right, now I have as many running backs as receivers. I've kind of done it in a funny way. If you've followed any of my streams so far, I'm a little bit crazy about my Ryan Flanoy shares. I do like him. That this year locked in as that wide receiver 3, at least I think, there in Dallas. I think Dallas is going to throw the ball a lot. He was good on a target per route run basis last year. Good catch rate as well. Big mitts. So I feel like Flournoy is kind of one of those guys that I really like mixing in there in the 18th round. Coming down the home stretch here. Yeah, Tua goes now. I think, is that above where he normally goes? Yeah, that's a pretty strong belief from team 10 there that Tua is going to play enough games to be a usable, viable quarterback in the late stages there. So his ADP was 233. He just went just a little bit after pick 200 in this one. Capping off the 18th round right now as we speak. I like George Halani as a late late guy. We'll see if the Seahawks do anything else with that backfield while they wait for Charbonnet to get back from his knee injury. But you could get some decent, at least early season production from Helani. Obviously, you want the late stuff too, and I'm not sure that we can count on that quite so much. But even still, again, it's all about those usable weeks. If you can squeeze anything out of these guys here in the end game, I think it's a big positive for your team. So I think that there's a way in which you can see Helani, if things, continue to break favorably for him on that Seahawks roster as far as where he goes, or what they do at running back. I feel like Helani is someone that should be fine as a late round target. I was considering LaKent Allen. I'm a little bit disappointed I didn't get him. I feel like he's running back too, but as my cope, I'm just going to say, the Jags are obviously going to draft someone that's better or sign someone that's better, and LaKent Allen will be irrelevant this season. But I'm not sure if I believe that. I feel like LaKent Allen should he'd be a decent option there if he ends up as the running back too there in Jacksonville. All right, second to last pick coming up. It's a little gross, but I do like Ollie Gordon's fit in that offense. I feel like he's a guy that, we're not going to see a ton of volume for him, but I do feel like he's going to score a handful of touchdowns. So at least like that should raise my running back floor on a week-to-week basis. So could be worse. I'm fine. I kind of just needed to attack this running back issue that I've made for myself with volume. Not a ton of other guys going in this range that you can even really project to have much of a role. Did think that he had it though, however, so happy to grab him there late. Just got one pick remaining. So fragile quarterback build here, not for the faint of heart. That's okay, because if the theory is, if Burrow were to get hurt or Jordan Love were to get hurt anyway, this team wasn't probably going to go particularly far anyhow. Hard to limp to the finish line with, one of these guys. Although I suppose Jacoby Brissett might have done that for you last year, but I doubt that Jacoby Brissett was getting drafted all that often. Maybe Daniel Jones could have been that guy last year too, but he obviously got hurt late in the year. So those late quarterbacks aren't necessarily going to save you. And again, I felt good about where I spent my capital in the early parts when it came to Burrow and to Love. I'm going to mix in a Ted Hurst share while I can. He's a rookie out of Georgia State, not too far from here. Incredible combine from him. I think one of the best combine performers this year and in recent years in terms of his all-around athleticism. Big guy that can run, that can really jump as well. Great catch radius, good production as well. So he's one of those guys that I kind of circled as a Goldilocks type of prospect from this year's combine, where it's some guys' cases, like your Jeff Caldwell's, there's too much athleticism with too little production. And then, there's the other end of that spectrum where it's where's the athleticism when you were so productive in college? At least in Hurst's case, he had both. I think the other guy that I want to start mixing in late in drafts before the NFL draft actually takes place is probably Skylar Bell. He's another guy that checked those boxes. He's a little bit older, but by that same token, last 2 years, super productive at UConn, and also had himself a really, really nice combine as well. We're getting close to the end here. It doesn't look like the software loved my draft, but that's okay. Still had some fun and definitely some kind of bigger reactions to the draft here. Let's go over some of the big names. All right, so Kenneth Walker, he went sixth pick of the second round. He had been kind of going maybe fourth or fifth pick of the third round, so definitely on the rise there. Travis Etienne goes up about 9 picks from where he had normally been going. He was usually at the 3-4 turn. Mecca Ibuka, I think by virtue of Mike Evans being gone, he scoots up just a little bit in the ADP. Bashal Tutin, I think, is really a guy that we're going to have to keep an eye on as far as his draft stock in these underdog best balls. Goes about 2 rounds higher than he had been. So that's pretty significant movement there when it comes to Tutin in response to Travis Etienne being gone. Alec Pierce didn't move up too much from his re-signing with Indianapolis. So I guess that's not overly surprising. Let's see. Anything else of note? I might have maybe jumped up and become the new high man on Tyler Algier, taking him 8.4, but definitely, like his fit in Arizona. Definitely think that Arizona's other running backs are some version of very suspect. So I feel like he's going to take over and kind of be the guy. Jalen Warren, largely unaffected by the addition of Rico Dowdle in Pittsburgh, but that signing happened, I guess, recently enough to where maybe that drafter wasn't totally sure that had happened. I'm not entirely sure. J.K. Dobbins moving up just a little bit now that he's going back to Denver. Malik Willis, we see his new ADP going just before Tyler Shuck. That's interesting. We'll see if he's able to kind of hang on to that, if that trend continues, if he even moves up so high as to like maybe even jump up at Jordan Love, something like that. I'm not totally sure. Kyler Murray, only going 10.7, so that's a bit. I felt like that was a bit high for him, but I'm not sure if I have that number right in front of me. Woody Marks continues to kind of drop again in light of the David Montgomery signing. Appears that I have some bad closing line value on Quinshon Judkins shares. I've definitely taken him in the 4th round before. Travis Kelce, I feel like that's a fine pick in the 13th round. Still feel like he's gonna, he'll have a huge share in that offense. Jacoby Brissett, the news of him kind of being the starter there in Arizona this year is something that has definitely moved him up. He was usually going somewhere in the right around where Jalen Noel went. Like 194 was his ADP coming into tonight. Gonna have to get used to Brissett being in the 15th. He kind of, to me right now, is sort of your last chance saloon at getting a viable quarterback that could actually at least like be starting most weeks, because you get past him. Yes, there's Aaron Rodgers, but we don't know what he's going to do. Do you really want to trust that? Geno Smith, is he going to be like the starting quarterback of the Jets? Yikes. Deshaun Watson and Shadur Sanders, feel like that, you're at best getting half a season proposition between those two. And, Tua and Michael Penix, I think we have similar issues in Atlanta, so that I would be plenty worried about. And I will shout out the team that took LaKent Allen, because if the Jacksonville backfield stays as is right now, then LaKent Allen should be a pretty nice get in the 19th round if he is that direct backup to Bashal Tutin this year. So definitely going to have my eye on him. Oh, he also got Tez Walker, one of my other favorite late round targets, big play guy there in that Baltimore offense. But to recap for my team, I got Joe Burrow and Jordan Love as my quarterbacks. I got James Cook, Saquon Barkley, Tyler Algier, Kamani Vidal, Keaton Mitchell, Emmanuel Wilson, and Ollie Gordon as my running backs. So kind of need the free agency gods to be kind to me. We'll see if they are in the case of Mitchell or with Wilson. Got T. Higgins, Zay Flowers, Christian Watson, Jacoby Myers as my primary receivers. Took a gamble on Tyreek Hill. Also got Keyshawn Butte, Ryan Flanoy, and Ted Hurst, one of my favorite speculative rookies to grab at the end of drafts, trying to mix him in a little bit while these drafts are still 20 rounds on Underdog. And then my tight end room, Rondé Gadsden, Brenton Strange, and Isaiah Likely. So I feel like that's a strong three, I feel like, as far as going with a 3 tight end build. I like that. I didn't feel like I really overspent for any of those guys. So happy with it overall, even if technically I was a little bit ahead of market relative to ADP. But I think that is going to wrap things up for me on this edition of the RotoWire Best Ball stream. A lot of fun hanging out with y'all. Try to do this every single week. Maybe we'll have to do another one this week. I don't know. A lot of stuff going on with free agency. I feel like we might have to jump in, do another one here as we kind of like get our eyes readjusted to the new ADP with all these new faces in new places. Kind of one of our last big kind of seismic moments of ADP shifting during best ball season. Of course, we got the draft about a month and a half away. That's going to change some things as well, but free agency really shakes things up. Important to at least get a read on stuff. You don't always have to be the guy that sets the new market on these players at their respective landing spots, but hopefully this was informative for you guys to know that, hey, next time you draft, you're not going to get Kenneth Walker in the 3rd round. Next time you draft, you may or may not be able to get Travis Etienne if you're picking somewhere with the middle draft slot. That type of thing, good thing to know before you get rolling on your draft. So if you enjoyed this draft, give us a follow over at RotoWire. You can check us out. If you use the code YouTube15, you have 15% off. So just go to rotowire.com, plug in that promo code YouTube15. Bada bing, bada boom. I'm going to pull it up right here at the bottom of the screen. Just kidding. No, I'm not. Maybe I am. Yep, there it is. YouTube 15 right there. So do that, 15% off. Also, just a couple weeks till baseball starts. So if you're playing fantasy baseball, no better place to have a subscription than rotowire.com. Again, that's going to do it for me here. I'm John McKechnie. You can find all my best ball content over at rotowire.com. I'll be writing an article a little bit based on this piece or on this draft and just kind of my takes on the free agents in general and where they landed, where the values are now with that all taking place. Put that up on the site here soon. I got a bunch of other stuff though, either from the combine or just some positional reviews and previews. All that stuff up on rotowire.com in the best ball section. So you can definitely check that out. Again, my name is John McKechnie. This was RotoWire. Thanks for listening.